Hello, teammates. Hope all's well. This is Derek Parker, Regional Vice President. Hey, just want to talk to you today about delivering policies. One of the most important parts of our business is really having the ability to deliver policies in a simplified, timely fashion. So, a couple things I want to go through today to really kind of address delivering policies. I really wanted to actually show you an actual policy, show you some components of the policy. So if you're actually looking at this, you definitely want to take some notes. You want to make sure that you're definitely on point as far as delivering policies and making sure that we're doing a good job as far as getting the policies back to a client. Oftentimes there may be changes that definitely may need to take place. So you also want to make sure that you have policy changes or policy change forms on hand, because oftentimes people will want to change the policies. They may want to change the beneficiary. If they're going to change the draft date, you don't need to basically do that via policy change. You just call into the home office to the home office number, and they'll be able to transfer the call to billing, and they'll be able to actually make that change. But a couple things, as far as policy deliveries, there's two ways to deliver policy. One is to do the easiest way, which is electronic media, which when you're doing a policy, you can actually, it comes to the section of how the policy is going to be delivered. You can key in the policy email address, and that policy will essentially be electronically delivered to your client. That is obviously a really good, efficient way, particularly if you're dealing with somebody from afar. Maybe you rolled out the Waldorf, or you maybe rolled to Frederick, somewhere far, and instead of having to go back to that client, to physically deliver a policy, you can essentially do electronic, and they can get that email, and then they can even print the policy out. But one thing important is that regardless of whatever way that you're going to do it, we have to still, deliver the policy in a very timely fashion. I'll address that in a minute. So the second way would be, of course, to get it actually a physical policy. And the physical policy will, there's actual policy where you have to deliver that. So I'm going to basically show you an actual policy and what it looks like. Typically, the policies, when they come to the office, they're going to be in an envelope that looks like this. They're mailed directly from Primerica. The policies are not mailed to the client. They're not mailed to you individually at home. They're mailed directly to the office, to the branch manager office. And typically it's our role is to basically receive the policy. We used to put them in your mailboxes. We're not going to do that anymore because they have pertinent private information, name, birthday, social. So usually what we're going to do is just give them directly to you via recognition night, which is Thursday night in the office. So that person, information is protected. So when we get a policy in, it's going to look like this. We're going to, break open the policy. There's a very important attachment in there that's going to talk about, there's a letter that talks a little bit about attention Primerica representative. That's in bold, and it says this is your chance to save $25. So what this says is you have to have the client sign both the policy delivery receipt, and then there's a thing called a basic illustration. I'll show you that in a minute. But if you don't have those submitted back to the home office in 30 days, they're going to pull $25 from your advances. So your next policy or the next earns that you get from helping somebody, they're going to deduct $25. I mean, that can get expensive. So you imagine doing 4 of those, that's $100 they're going to pull from you just from doing something like this. So this is really simple. Sometimes we know that, people get lazy on delivering policies. You may wait to the last minute. You may be lazy, whatever. You have to get this done in a timely fashion, not just for our sake on our end to cover our butts, but think about it from a consumer perspective. You make an acquisition, whether it be, you buy a car or you order something, and it just takes a very long time. There's no follow-up, no correspondence, no thank you for your service, none of that stuff. And, the person, it goes 60 days and they still don't have their policy, and they're wondering, where are you at? And next, when you don't respond to clients, a lot of times people they'll become, indignant. They'll make phone calls. They'll call home office and they want to just cancel everything. So to avoid that, we just want to make sure that we get the policies in an expeditious time frame. Now, if for some reason you can't deliver a policy, I would expect that you would pick up the phone. Hey, call myself, your regional vice president. Say, hey, look, I'm having some issues. This is what's taking place. Don't just give this policy to your downline. And secondly, please don't give your policy to an unlicensed representative, because they have no idea what it is. And God forbid, if something were to take place, now you're putting that private information in the hands of someone who's unlicensed. So now we have a potential legal obligation, and then we got a moral crisis as well. So we have to make sure that, hey, if we can't deliver the policy, we don't, just make sure we communicate, with the regional vice president in terms of what's taking place. So in that folder, in the packet, usually your policy packet is going to be broken up like this. Basically, this is, of course, again, for life insurance policies only. It's going to basically have what is called a PDR, and it's going to have a basic illustration. This is what is called the policy delivery receipt. So there's a front card, there's a back card. Self-address going directly back to Primerica. So the one that basically has the address here, we don't ask for that one. We're looking for the one that has the self-address. So you have to send the self-address one back to Primerica in Duluth, Georgia. Or what we can do is we can fax it directly in the home, fax it directly from our office to the home office. So if you make it a point to give it to Tawanda, having it signed and dated, we will certainly send these back in ASAP to the home office. Then you have what is called the basic illustration. This is a basic illustration page. And basically I'm going to cover a couple things on this because it's oftentimes that a lot of people really don't understand what a basic illustration is. So I'm really going to put this up close just so you can understand this. This is what we call an optional illustration, okay? So basically what it says is that this is optional, but it has to be signed. BI, basic illustration, what it stands for is that the client is going to get an option, okay, after their first year anniversary to increase their coverage from years 2 through 10%, okay? Again, after their first anniversary, okay, from years 2 through 10, they're going to give them an option to increase their coverage 10%. So this is an option. So they're going to notify the client within 90 days of their first anniversary. They're going to get a notice in the mail, and basically it's going to give them an option. It's going to say, if you increase your coverage 10%, this is the amount, this is the coverage amount, and that is what it's going to be. Now, if they don't respond, or write that down and fax it back to the company, they're going to automatically increase the coverage. Now, you may be looking at it like that. Oh my God. Well, as the agent, you get paid for any increases that the clients take advantage of. So that's a big plus for us, is because people are taking advantage of higher coverage, and you're getting compensated on it. A lot of times people want higher coverage because maybe the coverage that they got out initially wasn't really what they wanted, but they're able to take advantage of the basic illustration to really help them. So this page here, the way you explain this to the client is that this is what is called a basic illustration. This is optional, but you do have to sign this, and I have to send this back to the office, home office. It doesn't obligate you to anything, but it's just basically what it is. It's a basic illustration because there's a section for the client to sign, which is right there, and then there's an agent section right there. So both of you have to sign. So I'm going to put this up close, and basically what this is saying is this. If the client took advantage of the basic illustration and they took advantage of the coverage, it's showing here, or I'm sorry, over here, it's showing what it would be in year 5. So in year 5, if they took advantage of the basic illustration, it would be $72 a month, and basically their coverage, if you go on to the other side, is saying their coverage would be essentially what is that? $47,000. Okay, So basically, I'm just really giving you an illustration of what it would be in year 5. So it's going up 10% every year. So it's saying if they took advantage of the coverage, it's showing what it would be in year 5. It's showing what it would be in year 10 if they took it. So again, it's just an illustration. That's how you explain it. It's optional. It's great to take advantage of this attribute, but if you decline it once, you can never do it again. So you can't decline it in year 2 and get it again in year 3. So if you decline it once, they'll just take it away permanently. But it's a great option for to have. So this has to be signed. We can fax this back in, or on the back they have what is called a self-addressed envelope back to Primerica. So the basic illustration that I just showed you, along with the policy delivery receipt, these are 2 important components that have to be signed and sent back to home office. Now, if you look on your Life Manager, it'll say PDR and BI. If both of those aren't sent in, it'll still show it being as outstanding. And then they'll give you a date of when it has to be received, into the home office. Now, if you don't get the basic illustration, the policy delivery receipt, and the basic illustration back in that 30 days, well, you're going to be hit, number one, with $25 from the home office. And then secondly, you're going to have what is called a chargeback or not taken. Okay, they're synonymous in the sense that you're going to lose money. So that just means that that's going to show a deduction that the client didn't want it, and therefore they're going to pull that earned commission away from you from your next sale. So the important thing is these have to be done. They have to be completed in a very expeditious time frame. So typically, when I'm presenting a policy to a client, we will move what is called the policy fact sheet. We'll move that up front. Okay, so this is basically what is called the BRC cards. These are perforated, taken away from the PDR, and typically this has a client's name, some pertinent information. You hang on to this. This is for your records, and you can basically create a Rolodex where you can essentially cut these off. You can fold them over, put them into a Rolodex, and you can reference for future use. So that goes back to you. So I usually have what is called the policy fact sheet. When I'm delivering the policy, this is the very first thing I always go over. I always want to cover the policy fact sheet. So the policy fact sheet is really going to outline, hey, what are your coverages? Make sure the person's name is spelled correctly. Make sure that everything is accurate. And right there, it'll say additional benefits. So it'll say other benefits, increasing benefit rider. If they had waiver of premium or child rider, it'd be listed there as well. So in this instance, this client has $30,000 of coverage. It's basically showing what is called the policy date. Now, this is important because a lot of times you may wonder, like, when is the first draft going to take place? The first draft is usually going to take place on a policy within 30 days after the policy date. So, for example, this policy date here is dated 6/28. So, therefore, the next draft, the client's draft date is listed the 28th of every month. So, the draft is going to take place July 28th. There you go. So, if this policy date said 7/28, then therefore the draft date would be 8/28. So, you always want to make sure that we have that correct. If you don't know, you can always call in directly to home office to get that information. But one of the worst things is to tell somebody that their policy is going to draft on a particular day and it's not, or vice versa, it drafts sooner than what you thought. So we always want to be, on point as far as knowing exactly what's what. The client has reminder cards at the bottom, which just kind of allows them to remind themselves of what's taking place. So if I'm delivering a policy, this is the very first page that I'm going to deliver. I'm going to talk about the benefits, and I'm going to talk about buy term and invest the difference. So I'm not just going to say, hey, here's your policy, basically sign this information and we're done. But I'm going to talk about, the fact that, hey, we have the policy in place here. I'm going to talk about, hey, let me bring back an investment person if I'm not investment licensed, because I want to put an investment in place. Why? Because we know that the more services people have, the retention of their policy goes up exponentially. So we want to make sure that we're putting things in place for them that they're going to benefit from. So having the policy, itself, and then, putting the investment piece in place, that's really critical. Now, in all policies as well, you will also see what is called a will form. So the will forms are basically there as well. So in the policy, there is what is called a will. Every application, every client that you see needs a will. So this is a really simplified way of saying, hey, it's already pre-printed, it has your name and your information on it. You can basically help the client get a will. You got to bring this stuff up because it's just not going to happen automatically. So if I'm sitting with a client, usually my transition to the will is I'll say, hey, Derek, 8 out of 10 people in Prince George's County don't have a will. Do you have a will in place? And of course, they're going to tell me, no, they don't have a will in place. And I'll say, well, how does that make you feel? I'm going to, really address that. Have you ever thought about it? So there may be some things that they may bring up. I may have to overcome some basic objections, and then I can really speak and expound to, why you need a will. And then if they say I want a will, then I'll say, well, hey, how much does a will cost? Well, generally, most attorneys charge between $500 to $1,000 for a will. However, Primerica has a plan where we'll do it for $300. And in the event, if you don't have the $300 to come up with up front, we'll allow you to get started for $25 a month. That's a really simplified way, and people are able to embrace that, and they're excited about that because we still allow them to get enrolled into the program, and you're still getting paid. Other particulars in the policy, there's other particulars. There's a welcome letter from Primerica. There's a notice from client services. I love this little deal here that they kind of did to show all the different products that we offer. And then over here, there's pertinent information as far as just some flyers as far as privacy notice, exclusions, things like that they can take a look at. One of the important areas that you need to be familiar with is you need to know that the actual policy itself, or the policy book, is actually in the back, okay, in the back on the left sleeve. So you can pull that out. So you may say, well, I'm not sure what, who I listed as your beneficiary. Well, you're going to find that here. So if this is the actual policy itself, it says term insurance to age 95, that's guaranteed. And then if you open this up, it will tell you, if you go to the back of this, it will show you the actual application that you entered via Turbo. So if you did a Turbo Apps, it's going to show the actual application that you did, and it's going to show all the things that you checked off. So if you did something wrong, it's going to show right in this book here in the policy itself. So I can actually flip through, and it'll show like the beneficiary, like right over here. I can show if I listed kids as a child rider. The initial payment, they may say, well, I thought, you took out $80, and I could go right here to the actual policy, and it'll show exactly what amount that we pulled out initially. So it's all right there in this policy book, and it really kind of gives all the information that I need as far as what's taking place with the policy. So I always keep that information, I'll put it right back in where it belongs. I always tell people, hey, become acclimated with what's in your policy. If you need to review something, certainly do so. But you want to keep these policies in a safe place, preferably like a, safe deposit box, somewhere, usually out of the house, because if the house burned down, God forbid, and someone were in it, they wouldn't know necessarily that there was a policy that person may have had. And yes, that has happened, unfortunately. There's billions of dollars of unclaimed insurance out there. People don't know exactly where their stuff is. So it's good to kind of inform people to keep it in a private place. So once I've delivered the policy, now what I'm going to do is very simplified. I'm going to go to my Life Manager on Primerica Online on POL. And I'm going to pull up my notes, and I'm going to indicate in the notes, policy was delivered on such and such date. All is done. our policy was delivered. However, they wanted a change here. So I'm going to, inform or update anything that's needed. That's good for other people, your uplines to take a look at that, or your regional vice president. In our office, we have an office presence, so they can look at that and see exactly that what was updated, what was changed. So we're kind of on top of notes. So that way, if there's any discrepancy, we can always refer back to that and know that that was taken care of. So policy deliveries are a very essential, vital part of your business. We got to make sure that we are on top of getting policies in a very expeditious fashion, that we're taking care of the client, we're doing what's right, we're telling the client about buying term and investing the difference, and we're making a difference in people's lives. So if you do those things and you do them in a orderly fashion, timely fashion, it's great to have control of your business versus the business controlling you. All right, God bless you.